Good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. This is the Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, February 17th. First on our agenda for the work session is an update on the memorandum of understanding regarding the solid waste agency. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just really quick, the MOU has been approved by all agencies, so City of Marion, Lynn County, Cedar Rapids, and the agency. The county appointed the working group, officially appointed the working group on Friday. And then Councilman Harper and myself will be leaving here about 4:45 today. The first meeting of the working group is tonight, 7:30 at the county hall. So we will certainly keep everybody apprised. It is a pretty accelerated schedule. I think our second meeting's on Friday the 20th, and then the third meeting I think is on the 24th. So that was included in Lynn County's press release announcing the. Answer any questions?
Hey, questions? A positive step. Okay, the next item, we're ahead of schedule. Yes. The next item is the fiscal year 27 budget. Thanks, Brian.
This is where it goes downhill on schedule. No. We will try to keep on schedule here. So, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. How do I advance these slides in here? Okay, cool. So this is a continuation of our fiscal year 27 budget discussions, and this is specifically regarding the capital improvement program. So a quick reminder of where we're at in the process. We have had our prioritization meetings, we've had initial discussions with council, and then we had our budget work session, which we had another discussion. And so this is a follow-up from that, working towards our adoption in April. So our first budget discussion of this evening, this is a follow-up from the work session where the need for additional pickleball courts was brought up specifically at Hannah Park. And so staff did some work on this, and the recommendation is on the screen here. So staff is actually recommending to engage an engineering firm. So this is due to their capacity and some challenges with the ground out there, and I will let Mike or Seth talk more about that with your questions. And so the recommendation is to do a study, to do some design and engineering for an estimated cost of $60,000 at Hannah Park. And so this would be in fiscal year 27, and the funding source for this could be out from the interest in the Capital Projects Fund. Looking at the CIP, we have there is a project funded by the interest in the Capital Projects Fund that is looking to come under budget. So we are thinking that we could use that dollars to do this, to do these design and engineering costs. So is there any questions that Seth or Mike want to add anything on that specifically about the site?
Well, you mentioned some challenges with the site, so you might summarize that.
Yeah, so over here where we currently have the existing, there is some grade changes there. There's also some wetland areas too that we'll just want to be considerate of the grade. It's not something we can do, but we'd also want to make sure that we plan accordingly and do it properly.
Okay. Any questions? Okay.
So I don't know what I was gonna ask, pickleball courts at Hannah Park, so could this engineering firm, I guess it's just engineering firm. My thought was that it had to be at Hannah Park. If there was a consultant that's hired for this, maybe they could come up with a better location. Not saying that Hannah's not the better location, but maybe they could analyze the city to see where the best location would be.
So there would be two different scopes there. So if we did do still looking at the site, we would want to look at site specific measures, if we're looking at location, we would do more of a study.
Right, and this is just engineering design plans for that specific site.
For that specific
Okay.
site.
Thanks.
Other questions?
So just one further thing to add, this would be, once we did get some estimate of costs, then this project would then be submitted as part of our regular CIP process in the next update.
Okay. Anyone has to add to that? Okay.
Okay. So the next consideration, this was a follow-up from Councilmember Harper regarding the 10th Street sidewalk and fence replacement project. So this project was initially not recommended by staff, but it was on the list that kind of put your council hat on list that we ask council to look at when they're considering the prioritization of projects for their feedback. So engineering staff has evaluated the site. And so the findings are on the screen. If there's any additional questions, then Mike is here to answer any questions that you have. The main finding was that it's not a liability at this time, but staff are recommending that there would be the replacement of the sidewalk and fence in either fiscal year 27 or fiscal year 28, with an estimated cost of 50,000. And again, depending on how it's the project for the tear down of the tent facility at the old Public Works site that is looking to come in under budget. We could use interest in capital projects or local option sales tax. So if you have any specific questions about,
Get to see the estimated cost
it has not
since it's
gone up.
initially put on the potential list.
Staff does not feel that the cost has changed at this time.
Good to know that it's being not allowed, because, I mean, this initially came up because I walk on my walks past there a lot, and to me, it looked like it could be a dangerous fence. And it also just seemed like it doesn't say we're reaching higher. But it's good to know that it's not liability if we have to wait a year. Any questions for Mike? Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, Brian, Mike, I think it would be useful for council's benefit to share the pictures that I passed along, and just as a follow-up to this. I certainly appreciate the examination of this. It's I guess my takeaway when I went to look at this, and for my colleagues here, this is on the west side of 10th Street, immediately across from Brockman Avenue. And there's a drainage way there that I think you'll be familiar with. You know, the condition of the sidewalk, and I just felt if that was a residence fencing, we would probably be seeking that there are some remediations applied. So I just appreciate the examination on this, and hopefully we can find a way to have it get done in FY 27.
Other comments, questions?
So I would just add, so is it the council's direction that we do slot it in for fiscal year 27 or for fiscal year 28? That's the guidance that I'd be looking for, so we
If
can.
you think the funding's there and do it, we can fit it as a work plan. I'm fine with 27.
Can I ask Mike or Brian, I know as staff was evaluating this, there's something with stormwater master planning. Am I misremembering or recalling correctly? There's a potential for a project in this area within the next fiscal year or two.
So we don't have a plan wrapped up at this point with nothing in the next 5 years, but yes, that is a possibility that we put something, new sidewalk, new fence in, and that gets tore out because of the storm sewer improvements. That's all a possibility.
So that is something that we'll want to be cognizant of prioritize it, but if, as we get further along with the stormwater master plan, if it looks like we're gonna spend money to only take it out later due to, we'll certainly put you guys in.
Of course. Okay, any other questions or thoughts on that?
Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Our next presenter is Lacey with Uptown Marion.
Guys, I think I need a booster. A little taller than I'm used to. Well, hello, everyone, council, mayor, glad to see you all again. As I was preparing for this presentation and I was talking with my coworkers in the office, they were like, what are you going to talk about? And I said, well, I'm still here. It's a job that has a really high turnover rate in other communities, a lot of burnout. And one thing I would like to say to you all is thank you so much for your support. I have not experienced that myself. I feel very supported in this position with my community partners, such as the city of Marion and greater partners outside of the city itself, which we will get into here in just a little bit. Over this last year, one thing that we've really focused on in Uptown as an organization is building a team of volunteers that truly is committed to devoting time and energy to Uptown as an organization and to the district itself. And I think you'll see some new faces on this screen. These are our Uptown Board of Advisors. They are truly people who give of time as a staff of one. These are the other people who are out there on the streets doing the work, and that is on their own time without a dollar to their contribution. I am just very proud of these group of individuals. They have spent so much of their time and energy supporting the work that we've done this year, and we have gotten quite a bit done because of their efforts. And there are a couple familiar faces in this room up there as well. Thank you especially to those individuals. So let's talk about our 2025 wins. This was really a kind of a nice reflection point, sitting back and going, okay, what did we do this year? Because it has felt like a whirlwind. There's a lot to learn when you're a new director, and this is a community that is really full steam ahead. We've got a lot going on. So there's a lot to learn, a lot to catch up on, a lot to continue the momentum and move forward. One thing I think we all know is we do our sign and awning grant program, and that really has elevated the look of our Uptown and our Main Street. This year, we were able to award 4 sign and awnings, or actually it was just signs this year, to different businesses, some new, some wanting to elevate their aesthetics and curb appeal. We also hosted our 10th annual Open for Business grant competition. Unfortunately, we did not have a applicant that moved forward at the state level, but we took those notes from our previous applications and are already working towards a more competitive application this year. I think one of our most exciting achievements, and that is to our business community, kudos to them, is that celebrating our $60 million in private investment milestone. That is an incredible amount of investment that the community has poured into our Uptown, and that does not include the city's investment. That is a completely separate investment, and I'm excited because I think we will be achieving a new benchmark from our public investment from the city this year. We also saw a net accumulation of 9 new businesses and expansions. Business expansions can be anything from adding a part-time employee to moving into a larger storefront. This year, we really have seen a tremendous growth in our downtown district, and a lot of our businesses are adding employees because they're expanding their hours. They have expanded their revenue, and so they're able to absorb those costs. As always, we've hosted 30 plus community events that are free to our community, including 2 new events this year. Again, thank you, especially to our city partners who worked alongside us to put those on. It is no small feat. It takes an army to get those things done. And that is one of the most special things that we have in Uptown are those free community events that bring everybody out together. We also had around 468 volunteer hours. Now, this is one that I kind of scratched my head over because when I was comparing ourselves to other communities, I felt like maybe we were underreporting the hours that our volunteers really are giving. It is actually quite more than that. And so one thing I did want to do this year is I have been very diligent about tracking. One, I'm kind of a competitive person. And when I would see other communities with thousands of hours, I was like, how are they doing this? And I think it's because I wasn't tracking them as closely as I probably could. So hopefully next year you'll see quite a large increase in those volunteer hour numbers. We also hosted one successful Main Street Iowa partnership visit. This one, I want to say again, thank you so much. We are one of the communities that has the highest turnout in our community partners who attend these accreditation visits. It does truly show how much we all work together to get those things done. And Main Street Iowa is always so complimentary and uses us as an example of what community partnership should look like. All right, let's talk about work plans. So two of these plans should look quite familiar to you all, number 1 and number 3, but number 2, we did make some amendments to. So that number 2 strategy used to be business curation, but we decided that we had hit the metrics, we had hit our goals, and that it was time to move from seeking new businesses to working to retain them and helping them expand. So that is why you will see that change here. Business retention can be anything from sitting down and helping folks with their 5-year plan, helping them with their marketing efforts. If they're in a spot where they are needing to pivot what they're offering due to economic conditions, we seek to help them. And if we aren't the folks that can help, we are pointing them to resources. Entrepreneurial support and attraction. That is really looking at our vacant spaces, which are very few and far between at the moment, which is, again, super awesome. A lot of hard work getting there. Looking for the right fit. So previously with business curation, we were looking at the district holistically and looking at what our gaps are. Now we can really kind of narrow that down and go, okay, who would be a good fit in X, Y, and Z building? And then seeking them out. We can be a little more patient, not feeling this urgent need to fill all the vacant spaces. That is a story that a lot of other communities are facing, where they really feel the push and need to fill a space no matter what. Now we are really able to sit back and kind of take our time and get there. Doesn't mean we want our buildings sitting there empty for long, but we do have a little bit of a grace period and kind of can sit there and say, okay, what could go well here? Who knows this person? Let's reach out to them. And we have experienced that. I think a great example of that success in Uptown is Bartini. That was a really wonderful, warm handoff from our mayor. And we now have an awesome martini bar that is bringing loads and loads of people into Marion. I will say that our strategy 1, our placemaking, again, community engagement and events and community beautification. You will be seeing some new initiatives, especially with community beautification, trying to re-engage the design committee into working more alongside, again, our city partners. We just set up a meeting with the city horticulturalist to talk about spring plantings and how that committee can be helpful there. Whether it's a work day, whether it's planning I think the word would be botanicals that we're putting in the pots. So you might see some new initiatives that maybe we used to do a while ago that we're trying to kind of revive and make sure that we're using our volunteers to the best of their abilities. Let's see here. 2025 and 2026 new initiatives and partnerships. A few of these are a little bit of a review, and some of them are coming up. So this last year, if you attended, we did host the Uptown Marion Spooktacular. It was one of our Halloween events, and that was a partnership with Venture Academics here in Linmar. It was an amazing collaboration between a creative writing class and our restaurant communities. We also partnered with the Marion Heritage Center and Museum and brought the students into that space, had them do research on our historic buildings that house our restaurants, and they wrote creative stories and inspired menus. That was kind of my first tiptoe into working with Venture Academics. And once I understood the framework of that program, the sky's been the limit. I have really leaned heavily into using them as a resource and also tying them into our community and making the students feel welcome in Uptown. This year, you will see that we are doing what we're calling the Uptown Marion Visibility Lab. It is a media project, whether it's social media, marketing, website development, and having the students do some auditing, looking at our businesses and their presence online and seeing where the holes are, if there are, for example, incorrect addresses or hours that don't quite match up with what those stores are offering, and then providing that feedback, and then also helping businesses understand social media and marketing through the lens of a younger person. One thing that we really want to be focusing on again is that community buy-in and helping our youth feel welcome in our community. I've spoke on this many times before. That is a big passion of mine. And so I'm really excited for this project to kick off this spring. Another new initiative is called, we haven't come up with a name, so if you have ideas, please let me know. Right now, we're just calling it Art Walk. So last year, was it last year or last semester? So that is last year, 2025. An art teacher from Linmar reached out asking if she could put artwork in our business. And I kind of emailed her back. I could tell it was kind of like that cold call style email. And I said, hey, talk to me about this project. And really it came from, they had been doing artwork and then putting them up inside businesses, and that had been going so-so. But I could tell that she was looking for more. And in our conversation, I did reflect with a business owner who hosted artwork, and she said, it was a wonderful experience. She loved having them in there, but you could tell there was a sense that when families would come to look at the artwork, that they needed to spend the money to go in and see. And that didn't sit right with me. And so as we started brainstorming, I was like, how could we integrate this, one, with the Marion Arts Festival, and two, make this a true third space experience where people have no expectation that they're spending any funds. They can just go and enjoy. So that kind of evolved into this art walk, where the Linmar elementary schools and one of the elementary schools from Marion Independent are putting artwork installations into the window fronts of businesses in the week leading up to Mother's Day and the week leading up to the art festival. So families can come and they can experience that artwork without any expectation of going into a business. One, I would never take my children into some of the businesses. They would break everything and anything. And two, they don't have to spend any money. They can just walk around and enjoy the art walk. We also are working on having an audio tour, so it is accessible to all people that might want to partake in this really neat program. I think this is one of those things where we can be creative in how we're using our spaces in Uptown that isn't just has to do with like focusing on retail and restaurants. We can truly bring in our littlest in our community. Let's see. Another event that we had this year was the Marion Monster Mash. It was the first of its kind, and if you guys did not come, you missed out. It was a trunk or treat bonanza. We had pumpkins, decorating, costume parade. We partnered with FSB, and when we ran our geofencing data through Placer AI, we found out that we had about 1,200 people come through. And it was an event we did not advertise. In fact, I said no to advertising because I wasn't sure how it would go. And we will be doing that again this year. It was a wonderful event. Thank you to everybody who contributed, especially to Farmers State Bank. It was wonderful. Let's see. Coming up here in April, we are having a reimagining of our real estate showcase. This really came about, one, because we don't have very much real estate to showcase, and two, we have a lot of entrepreneurs who are constantly reaching out, looking for information. How do I start my business? What resources are there out there? We wanted to make this an entrepreneur-centered event where we're welcoming them to our community, showing them the support that they would have should they choose to open their business here, and who are those friendly faces along the way. We are also planning to announce a new grant program called the Business Growth Support Grant. That is a grant that pays for quarterly business coaching for an entrepreneur or a business in Uptown. When I was thinking about the money that these folks were looking for every time they would call, I knew it wouldn't be right to hand them startup dollars because I didn't want them to depend on it. But how could we get them on the right foot? How could we make sure that we are retaining them and that they have support? And I think that after talking with a lot of our business owners, they are not reaching out to business coaches. They are not reaching out to mentors because it's cost prohibitive and they would have to step away from their businesses that they're working in. We did a lot of brainstorming and dreaming of what that could look like. We also understood that grants tied to COVID money previously, that those funds didn't necessarily go to business coaching. And so we were trying to find a way to make sure that if we were going to give anybody grant funds to start their business, that we were doing it in a way that was sustainable. And this is where we've landed. I also think that this shows, again, what type of community Marion is and why it is probably a place that you might want to open your business. And look at all these wonderful people who are here to help you along the way. I think it tells a greater story than just, yeah, Uptown is awesome. It has cool things that are happening, but truly speaks to the support that the Main Street program has to offer. I think I just talked a million miles a minute, but I didn't want to go over my time. Thank you so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Questions for Lacey? Go ahead, you.
Yeah, Lacy, I think it's good that you added the goal of business retention and expansion. I assume one topic that would be under that heading would be parking.
Mhm.
We have discussions with that throughout the year, every time we are in meetings or even individuals. That is a topic that comes up frequently. And so can you kind of tell me what role you feel your Uptown group is playing in helping come up with some ideas and solutions? Because your group not only talks about it from the customer side, you also got to talk about it from the employee side, where they are. So you kind of got both ends of that. So can you tell me what role your group is playing in that arena?
Sure. I think it's kind of a twofold answer here. One, I do sit on, I know I always get the acronyms, it's funny, UPIT or UPIT, the Uptown Parking Implementation Task Force. So I do sit there, having a lot of, different discussions with the various people on that task force. And that I think is a good starting point. You have a group of individuals who that is their sole focus is those solutions, and understanding the parking study is another big part of that, right? So one, we're not the parking experts, but we are the people that should be looking at that study and deciding, what things should be implemented, what recommendations could we make, what are the biggest needs. So I think that's part of my responsibility naturally. And then two, I think one of the biggest things that we as a whole, what we can do is kind of flipping the script on our parking perception. One, I think any place that is worth being is going to have parking constraints. It is full because people want to be there. And two, then helping educate our business owners on what type of language is not so negative. If everybody is coming in and they're like, man, parking here is the worst, and the business owner is like, you're right, it is. That doesn't help, flip that script and help them understand it's okay if you have to park a block away. We're happy to see you and any stop you make along the way. I would like to give an example. I think Dana at the Skin Society has done a wonderful job with that. She nips those conversations right away and really flipped the script of you're coming to the spa not because you're in a rush. You're coming here to take the time to take care of yourself. It is okay to live life a little slower. But I also think that it means we do have to be responsive and understand that if somebody is coming from outside our community and they don't understand the parking in Uptown, that we have the responsibility to make sure that maps are accessible, that signage is there, which is a lot of the work that task force is doing.
Well, I know the city certainly has a role in coming up with short-term and long-term solutions. But I also do see that the Uptown group also has a key role.
Yes.
In helping come up with those, not just the task force, but the Uptown group, I would hope, is also having separate discussions. And because that's got to be a collective, they got to kind of move in the same direction, not have to one way and have to.
Yes, I think it's also moving simultaneously. Like we have to be communicating with each other so everybody has the same priorities.
Yeah, I just want to add that signage, I think is huge. I think that it is a largely perception. It will become more challenging over time, but I think for now signage is key. And to your point about flipping the script and all that, the signage could direct people where to park. Instead of saying no parking, you're gonna get towed. You can say parking reserved for whatever, additional parking available at the library or at the city hall or something like that, that's in a positive way to direct people to where they should go park. And I think that, that will help, but again, with the image and the perception. Grant, that's something.
Yes, Lacey, how, my general question is from a program perspective, how do you keep your ideas fresh? Do you have a group of communities that you kind of benchmark against or tap them for the ideas that they're working on or the issues that they're resolving? I'm just trying to, it's easy just to stay wrapped into the Marion Metroplex.
Mm-hmm.
But what's that outreach that you do in order to again, sort of energize your thinking and problem solving?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, another twofold answer question. One, we have our monthly director calls for Main Street, Iowa, where all the directors get on teams and we have all these breakout sessions, and they do break us down into communities of like size. That is very helpful because it'll be very often that somebody be like, I have the most off the wall question, and somebody else has already done it. And so that is very helpful to have that resource. And we have a chat room that we use as well. I do have very frequent meetings with Jesse and Mount Vernon and then Jesse and West Branch. If you don't know, the Nubo Czech Village director position is currently vacant, so I don't have that as a community buddy, so to speak. And then as far as looking at other communities, I really do like to snoop around the country, and like I will just Google because the Main Street programs in other states, they're just very different how they run and operate. It drives my husband crazy, but anytime we go somewhere, if it is a Main Street community, you can bet that I am picking up every brochure and pamphlet that there is possible available to me. This summer, we went on a trip to Sheboygan, and it is a Main Street community, and I was in their visitor center asking all the questions because it is very interesting to see how they operate, and they have some really interesting solutions. Another example is we did take a trip up to, oh my gosh, Kim, I'm going to blank on the name, Stillwater, Minnesota, to do some community modeling and look at some of the things that they've done there and could we replicate them here, or what are things that we see as a pain point there, and then meeting with various stakeholders in that community just to sit down and bounce ideas off of each other. Yeah. Yes.
Anyone else? Well, I do want to just thank Lacey for coming in and giving us this update. Obviously, it's a very important partnership. The city, we've made a lot of investments in the uptown, and those investments can't be fully utilized, without people who are working very intentionally to best utilize those investments and then to put them to good use for the public, and to make Marion thrive. So it's a partnership. We, the city, invest in uptown and in chamber, and we put a lot of money into the infrastructure to give them the backdrop, to be able to have something to sell and to promote, and seeing that they're utilizing it so fully. I think it's important, so really appreciate the partnership and you coming in to give us the update, so
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Brian again. So I have scheduled by him.
On schedule, 4:35, look at that. No pressure. So this is another follow-up from our fiscal year 27 budget calendar. The sun is right in my eyes. Here we go. Well, look at that, Terrell's on it. Look at that. So this is a follow-up from our budget work session. And so where we had said that we would bring back the 5-year financial models, and we will start with the general fund and road use, and then we will get into the utility funds along with the rate setting recommendations from staff. So this is the general fund 5-year plan. This has been updated from the budget work session. for this current budget year. Still a lot of uncertainty at the state level with further proposed property tax legislation. There's actually 3 bills that have been currently proposed. The things that I wanted to highlight here, 2 years ago in the fiscal year 25 budget, you can see that in fiscal years 25, fiscal years 28 and 29, fiscal year 29 there, that was assuming that with the current legislation, so that's that 29 with the going from a 3.2 million deficit to a 1.4. In the fiscal year 25 and the 26 budget, we assumed under current legislation that the levy, as it's written, would go back up, or potentially could go back up to $8.10. Now we know that with the current legislation that is proposed, that seems unlikely. So under the fiscal year 27 budget, we have assumed that there would still be some form of ratcheting down, some form of limitation in our growth or our revenue. We just don't exactly know what that looks like right now. So other assumptions that I did want to note that are built into this model, we have 7% for public safety increases over the model, and then 5% for other general fund functions. That is a 5-year average that we have looked back. So that is based on that analysis. And so in fiscal year 27, you can see that our projections would put us below our 25% reserve as of fiscal year 29. So it's also worth pointing out that 2 years ago, we were projected to go below our 25% in fiscal year 27. So a real testament to the team with council's direction, with the work that we've done, schedule fees, reorganizations within departments, lots of ways that we're looking to bridge that gap with the uncertainty that's at the state level. We know that with the proposed legislation, once anything is finalized, we're going to have to do more analysis that will need to be done as we strategize moving forward. So I want to pause there. Is there any questions about the general fund model?
Steve has a
I
question.
know there's a lot of numbers.
That's to Brian, better request. So I understand the rationale for the 7 and the 5%. Since we've got the capability, which by the way, having this capability of doing these projections is fantastic. I'd like to see us do some other percentages, just to show the city council and others what the impact of 1% on that can be over a sustained period of time. We get so used to looking at everything on a 1-year plan. But I think when you start looking at things on a 5-year plan, you start seeing 1% over 5 years starts building up. So I'd like to see us play with some other percentages, whether it's 6 and 4, 6 and 5, 8 and 5. I think a few other percentages. I'll let the staff kind of pick what those are, but I think it's important to look at some of these percentages and say, if you just change it from 7 to 5 to 6 and 4, or even 8 and 6, 1% over a 5-year period of time, what impact that could have. And I don't need the detailed one, just summarizing it in some fashion. I think people will be surprised at what impact 1% over a 5-year period of time can have. So I think just having that awareness when we talk about that's important.
Yep, absolutely. And it's also so we also know that there's some more detail that in the next year we do plan. So once we get some more confirmation from the state what the revenues could look like, it's our plan to go in and actually analyze it at more deeper level, because right now we have 5% across, apart from public safety, across the board. So it's like looking in and going, okay, staffing and benefits and contract services and things do increase at different rates. And so it is our intention with this next year, as we build with some more certainty, to go in and kind of deeper diving into those levels. And as well, to your point, looking at those different percentage levels.
As long as we can do the what if scenarios pretty quick and easily, I think it's worth. Yeah, I'm not saying we need this right away. I think we can wait until the legislature gets some of their action done and decided, and we can figure out what impact that may have. But a lot of it is just basically just taking what we have and just saying, what if? What's the impact of that? I think that's might scare the pants off us, but, you know what? Looking at these numbers scares us. It scares me anyway. So I just want to make sure we're looking at some other what ifs.
Yep, thank you. Any other questions about the general fund, before we move on? So road use, over the last several years, the road use fund has seen higher revenues than projected and lower expenditures. That is looking to change, as I'll talk about in a moment. We have kept the fund balance higher, knowing specifically that we have had large capital expenditures with the plow trucks to replace. In fiscal year 27, we have traffic signal, infrastructure, and camera upgrades. That's contributing to the negative change in fund balance. Under that bottom line, you'll see in fiscal year 27. I know that there's a lot of negatives there, some large negatives, but that also another major contributing factor is that the original debt on the public works facility, we are looking to pay that off in fiscal year 30. So we're actually saving $1 million out of the road use fund for the next 3 years to pay off that original debt. So this is forward thinking as we look to reduce the interest obligations on this fund. And so you'll see the negative fund balance, the negative change in the fund balance that relates to that. The other major factor to talk about with road use is since we get the revenues from our road use tax from the state, we have in the past done a special census midway through that 10-year cycle. So it is worth noting that they did kind of change the rules around that, and we did analyze whether it was financially worth doing a special census, and to us, it did not seem so in a fiscal year 25 due to it being cost prohibitive to do that. But that has affected our revenues from the state, because as other communities maybe have done that, we then get a smaller piece of that pie. So that to say that has a negative effect on our revenues. And so you can see that in our fund balances, but we have intentionally kept a higher balance knowing that. And we expect to see a more positive impact on our revenues in the road use fund after the next census in fiscal year 30. The one other thing that I will note is that when you're looking at that reserve balance, so this year, and this is a common theme across all of the funds, we did do a cost allocation study, and then we did do an initial implementation of cost allocation. And instead of expenditures from internal service funds and other funds being directly allocated into road use and the utility funds, they are now transfers. So, and our initial transfers are not normally included in our reserve balance calculations. So that's something that we're going to look at our methodology in the future, because those transfers they're really operational transfers, but they're not reflected, and we think they should be reflected in some way in that reserve percentage. So, and the other point was just knowing that we need to have a higher balance with the revenue challenges until the next census. So, any questions about the road use financial plan? There's a lot of numbers coming out here. So moving on to the utility funds and the rate proposals for fiscal year 27. So here's a timeline. There's some communication due to go out in April and May, and then a chance to have another discussion before we would amend the schedule of fees with the rates to take effect July 1. So before we get into the detail of each utility fund and the rate proposals for fiscal 27. Everything here should be somewhat familiar, has been informed by discussions we've had over the past year, direction from council. An example of this is the urban forest increase. So that's directly tied to the implementation of the urban reforestation plan, which was recently presented and asked for direction. And so before we get into each fund, we wanted to show this high-level overview of the proposed rate increases. This also does include the water department, which their rates are set by the water department board. But I did want to stress that, as you can see at the top, this is bi-monthly billing. So we did want to show this as it would show up on a residence utility bill. Because I stress that because you'll see references to monthly charges as we look at the other funds. So I just didn't want there to be confusion. This is kind of as your bill would look and the impact of a bill on a bi-monthly basis, which is what our residents are used to seeing. So I'll pause for any questions. There'll be more chance for questions as we go through the funds. But overall, we are looking at a recommended increase of just over 3%. And this assumes an average water consumption of 1,200 cubic feet. So I can ask any initial questions, but know there'll be a chance to ask questions as we move along through the funds. And I can always come back to this slide also. Yep. So first of all, the sewer fund. So the sanitary sewer, the biggest factor with this fund is the new proposed 28E agreement with Cedar Rapids with our treatment plant. We have been intentionally incrementally increasing rates in the sewer fund with this unknown, with this uncertainty around the capital obligations for their sewer plant, because we knew that we had some share of that obligation. And so to avoid spikes in the residents' bill, we did want to make sure that we're planning accordingly. So with this new agreement, our future capacity needs and the current capital improvement costs of the Cedar Rapids treatment facility, they're all now included in our operational and our maintenance billing. So yes, there is an increase for this year, but all of those costs are now included. And so that's worth noting here. And then also sewer, similar to a road use, we are saving 1.5 million over 3 years to pay off the sewer portion of the original debt for the public works facility. So again, planning ahead for this obligation and planning ahead for the capital piece now with the new proposed agreement. I'll move on to the next screen. This is what we propose for increases for the sewer fund. So there is a separate capital charge on the residents' water bill, which is separate from the service charge for the operational and maintenance. So the capital charge, we are recommending an increase of 15 cents a month. This supports our sewer annual CIP program, in addition to other sewer obligations that come with some of our larger road construction projects contained within our pavement management program. So that's the capital piece. And so to keep up with the future increases under the new agreement with Cedar Rapids, we want to be cognizant of that. And so we are recommending an increase of 50 cents to the fixed service charge. And that's for the operational rate. We are not proposing an increase to the variable charge for fiscal year 27. So we're hoping with the structure of this new agreement with Cedar Rapids, we'll be able to see these trends. We'll be able to predict future increases, make more informed decisions about the rate. So I see this as a positive step. Any questions about sewer? So moving on to solid waste. So since the implementation of automated collections, we have seen that the tonnage volumes that the model had originally assumed, they've actually been lower, so resulting in lower operational costs. We've continued to analyze the automated program as a whole, including the performance of the trucks. And so you will be hearing more about that in the upcoming meeting next month. But this model, to note in fiscal year 27, does assume the replacement of 4 existing trucks to single hopper trucks. So this is deemed essential from staff to keep delivering that high level of customer service to our residents. And then another factor in the negative that you see for 27 and 28 is, again, that I'll kind of repeat myself. This is the last portion of that original debt of our public works facility. This is the solid waste portion. So we're planning ahead to pay off that in fiscal year 30. So that's the negatives that you'll see. But after fiscal year 29, when we are done with those transfers, then you'll see that the change in the fund balance starts to stabilize in 29 and 30. So given all that I just said, there are no plans this year to increase any solid waste rates for fiscal year 27. So just on the screen for your reference, these are the current, and they will remain the same, the charges for solid waste starting in fiscal year 27. Any questions about solid waste? So moving on to stormwater. So this is one fund that it is worth noting. We had the stormwater master plan mentioned earlier. So this fund does not currently have a replacement fund, unlike road use, sanitary sewer, and solid waste. So we will be looking with the implementation of the stormwater master plan, we will be looking to create a stormwater replacement fund to keep these capital costs separate as this fund evolves. So what the impact that this will have is that it will have a lower fund balance for our operating, because you can see that those reserve percentages are high in this model. The other impact, stormwater actually had probably the most significant impact of the cost allocation. That's another reason that those reserve balances that I talked about earlier that we'll be working to figure out a better strategy to show those reserve balances. So again, stormwater, we have been incrementally raising the stormwater rates intentionally over the last 2 or 3 years in preparation of the future obligations that the stormwater master plan will give. And you can see this from fiscal year 27 through 30 that there is a positive change in the fund balance here. And so this is essential as the stormwater master plan provides long-term data-driven models to identify system needs, reduce flood risk, and we can prioritize our capital improvements within the stormwater fund. So that all said, as we continue into to start the implementation of the stormwater master plan, we are recommending that there is a rate increase consistent with last year, and that would be a 15 cents increase on the fixed service charge and a 10 cents increase on the ERUs, which is equivalent runoff unit in stormwater talk. I will not pretend that I know what that means. If you have a question about that, Mike will tell you.
Yeah, can you just refresh our memory on what's the targeted date for the stormwater management plan? Do you have a targeted date?
Yeah, we do have a target date. I do not know off the top of my head. I don't.
Wow. Thank you. That's part of it. Okay, I didn't know.
I don't expect it.
That's fine. You know, somebody who wants this first of all, it's on the top of my head. Okay.
I know it's in the later stages. Is there any questions, other questions about the stormwater fund? Before we move on to our final utility, this one probably should be the most familiar, or it was the most recently talked about with council. So this model does assume the initial implementation of the urban reforestation plan, which we will talk about on the next slide. But you can see that in fiscal year 28 and beyond, the kind of goal is to have a stable fund balance. So that change in fund balance remains fairly consistent. And so as a kind of a refresher on what that initial implementation of the reforestation plan is. So we are adding contracted service and being proactive with the maintenance of our trees, and then it also funds additional plantings. And so this was a presentation that was done a couple of months ago, and the direction from council was that option number 2 that was in the middle would result in a $2 a month increase on the urban forest rate. Is there any questions at urban forest before we kind of start to summarize? So this is the city portions, not including the water department. So we can show here a summary of the monthly increases of each of the funds. And so this is a nice slide that residents can refer back to if they're looking at the increase on the monthly level. And so then just kind of wanted to show how that looks like on a resident's bill. So, and again, overall, we're looking at with average water consumption, just over 3% increase on the average resident's water bill. So I know that was a lot of information. This slide just recaps the next steps. And I'm happy to go back to any slide if you have any additional questions on any part of the presentation that was covered. I know that was a lot of numbers. Okay. With that, well, thank you for your time.
Amber.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. We are here to talk about Marion's plans for America's 250th anniversary. This year marks the semi-quincentennial, and we wanted to provide an overview of the ideas that have been generated by many community partners and touch on a $10,000 request that was submitted as part of the normal budget process. This would come from the Hotel Motel Fund, and want to confirm council alignment and support if you're in agreement with these plans. So when the idea of the 250th came about, obviously it wasn't ours, but we knew it was coming. We started meeting with several of our community partners, the Chamber, Medco, our local school districts, and several others that you see on the screen. We brainstormed a lot of different ideas, and then it became time to kind of rein in that list to see what was doable, what was realistic, but still gave our community a reason to celebrate this important anniversary. So our proposal includes focusing on the dates between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. And this aligns with when we do our military tribute banners. So it kind of it encompasses that same window. We plan to enhance some of our existing events and programs and add a few new initiatives. This gives us more exposure over a wider window of time rather than hosting just a single event. And now I will let Seth talk about a lot of the ideas.
So some of the ideas for the uptown enhancements, a lot of questions came about with seasonal plantings. We do plan on having red and white as a general theme in the plantings. There wasn't really much options for blue flowers to go into the annuals, but we would add blue accents, decorations that would around a 2-week period around that July 4th to really highlight the 250th in Independence Day. We do have in our uptown some additions that were made as part of the projects, light projections that we can flash onto the sidewalk, stars and stripes. We talked about patriotic bunting around the depot, to be able to add more of that flair for the independence, and then also encouraging uptown businesses to decorate their windows displays. For the community participation, we've talked about encouraging residents to be able to decorate. And here's an example in this picture of some bunting and flag placements that we would encourage to do. And this is something in partnership with the American Legion. They have a shop that we can help promote for people to be able to get these decorations. In addition to the many events that we put on, we would look at integrating some of these items, looking at for fireworks and fireflies, having a lighted 250th photo opportunity, doing patriotic theme for Fallen to Marion Parade, and then also hosting Iowa's Military Veterans Band for Flag Day. Some of the other things for these special events this year, a flag retirement ceremony with the American Legion, and then also just recognizing our veterans and active military during those events. Again, some of the other opportunities, doing the mayoral proclamation recognizing America's 250th. These next two items, suggestions from the mayor adding flags in prominent corridors, and then also a 250th planting, looking at seedlings along a greenway area to be able to do it all at once. The big Marion Read in partnership with the library, and then obviously using our city channels to be able to communicate these items and enhancements and encouraging residents to participate.
Any questions?
Any questions? Do we, eventually this will be published or put out to the community somehow, to share it in one place like everything we plan to do?
Yes, the plan would be to use the Marion Messenger in May to really provide that overview and then our social media channels.
It's all great ideas. I like the community tree planting, I suggested it because I think it's the way to get the community together, do it as a community to do a project honoring the occasion, and as something that that will remain and as an improvement in the community over time. So as a memory of that event. So but any other thoughts or ideas or concerns or okay.
Thank you very much.
You bet. And the residents who asked about the colors of the flowers, they'll be happy to hear that we listened. Okay. Oh, Seth, you're still on, okay.
I'll be up here for the next couple items. So this is a follow-up from a discussion in November. If you recall, we had to remove the depot carving that was placed at the depot. It had early deterioration. Over the winter time, we did take measures to preserve it. And this is just a quick show of kind of the things that we were looking at, making sure that we were addressing it appropriately. For long-term placement, we discussed about coming back to council. We took this to park board and also to art council. We discussed really two locations. We discussed City Square Park and Draper Park. Draper Park came from council. When we came to park board, there was also asked us to look at City Square as a location. So looking at both sites, we found this in City Square, Central Plaza, is an existing bed that is well shaded, is something that we were looking at. That's something that we are not getting at Draper Park with it being exposed. And so this was a recommended location. I was looking at City Square. We could place it in the bed, sit it on a footing, so it'd stay out of any of the irrigation or any of the wet and still be able to stay out of the sun, get that exposure. When we talked to the carver, there was about a 10-year life expectancy. We're about 5 years in. We would still look at it and try to prolong the life as much as we can, but we would look at it again every year, but we'll do a 5-year follow-up just to give it a report out how it's doing. And here is just the recommended location that came from Park Board and our council. And it is the staff recommendation sitting there in City Square. This is 14 foot tall. And so this is a location where it doesn't really have that. It has that clearance, room to breathe, and be able to showcase something near its original location. And then I am seeking council direction as far as this location.
Okay, so we did rule out the park and 5 o'clock.
Yeah, between the two, it's just Draper has it's going to be exposed to the same elements as far as the sun, and then there's also drainage items. So we'll just have to kind of think about where it's placed over there if we do put it over there.
And yeah, at some point, you said it has a limited lifespan. Does it make sense to try to put it indoors at some point?
The difficulty is the height. It's 14 feet tall, and so finding a location or a facility to accommodate that was pretty difficult to resolve. So yeah,
You know, just. Look at what we have.
yeah.
Okay, questions or thoughts on that? Does everyone in general, generally agreeable to the proposal? Okay.
And then just as a follow-up, this is going to be that relocation would happen in April. So all right, I'll just go right in.
Yeah.
Just here for part of our commitment to provide some monthly updates in regards to the Aquatic Center project. Uh, we're really following three tracks here as part of this project. Track one is looking at Willowwood. Track two is a private sector exploration, and then track three is looking at the existing Aquatic Center um, design and seeing if there's opportunities there. Again, just as a reminder for track one for Willowwood, we're doing that 5-year assessment for Willowwood. That's really looking at what can we do to extend its life. What are going to be some of those major issues that will come up in the next 5 years to be able to really have that data to be able to help make future decisions. The other part two of the track Willowwood would be if we were to rebuild a pool on that site, what those conceptuals would look like, and then that opinion of cost to be able to have that piece of material. For track two, we did have a meeting with Medco in their discussions with the private sector. The industry really looked at facilities such as this as needing strong support from hotel and commercial. The locations that they would have in mind would be closer to off of I-380, closer to those highways. They look at those sites that are well visited, like Prospect Meadows, Tuma, that are getting people there regularly. And then, just the feedback that we've received, that there's limited appetite for a regional scale of that nature. We'll still have continued conversations, but this is, at this time from a private sector, there's just that limited appetite. And then for track three, as a reminder, we'll be looking at the aquatic center concept. Some of the things that we're going to be looking at is redesign, talking about combining some of the bodies of water to be able to save on cost, what that would potentially look like, and then also identify phasing opportunities to be able to provide that all in hopes of having a more affordable option. From a timeline, we'll come back in March just to provide a timeline update. We do plan on bringing the steering committee back together, providing them updates as well. We'll have track one A and track 1B in April and May, where we'll follow back up with some of the concepts for what it would look like a pool at Willowwood to rebuild, and then also that pool assessment. And then in May 19th, we'll come back with some conceptuals for the Aquatic Center project with some phasing options.
Any questions?
Can you go back to the one, about the updates to Willowwood and what that can look like?
Yeah.
I really rebuilding concepts. So when you talk about concepts, are we talking about any amenities around the pool, slides and like a mini, I'm thinking like a pared down version of a larger aquatic center? Or are we talking about keeping this pool alive that's still the big hole with the diving board and very simple,
So we would look at like more of a community pool model. It might have some of those amenities, but because of the location and the proximity to the residents, it'll be a much scaled down version of that.
is it like a middle?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really what we look at. I mean, we want to keep in mind from the feasibility study and all the work that's been done, what the community was asking for, but we also need to understand the limitations of the site. And so that's really going to be the balance that we'll have for that. And what we know with the property, too, is just the scale. It's going to be more of, I would say, a neighborhood community sized pool like it currently is.
Maybe I'm misunderstanding when we're talking about the 5-year maintenance assessment and follow-up, but from our previous conversations, it seemed that if there is a rebuild at Willowwood, that this whole pool comes up, like, is it basically like digging out what we have?
Mhm.
Because it's, the systems don't work, they're old, all that, I mean, it's basically like placing a new pool at this space, it's not a maintenance of our current.
Yeah, so from a clarity standpoint, the 5-year maintenance is maintaining the existing pool. The rebuild would be demolishing everything and then just using the site to build an aquatic facility. And that's really because of and what we'll see from the 5-year assessment, you'll see is, and we've talked about this last year too, is a lot of this infrastructure that we can't see. So
Muppet walks or Saturday, working for an organization that manages many pools and all of them on different systems because of the age at which they are built. Understanding that this technology that is supposed to changes pretty rapidly. So every time we decided something, there's something. So it's not anything bad, but cute.
And the state has new laws too. So if we were to do any major renovations to this, we will have to, we're grandfathered into some of those regulations currently.
And just to add on, Sarah, is because the concepts of if we were to rebuild as an option, as a option versus the, on the road and what that would look like if we did basing or just basing in general. Maybe that's here at this location, but that this is just another piece of information to help us make informed decisions as we move forward with what a water facility will look like.
And then as a follow-up related to that, and I know this all comes back to us after we go through the assessment, so we're not holding you to these conversations or to these answers, except for, are we talking about one, like, can things happen simultaneously? Could we be deciding that we're gonna place a smaller community level pool area at the same time there is a private sector that's interested in a larger amenity? I mean, it can be happening.
Yeah.
It could potentially happen at the same time.
It could potentially happen at the same time. And, that's some of the conversations that we're having, if there is interest of that, um, just to be able to have that type of amenity, but still have the community pool. Because what you lose out on the private sector, you could just have from a community pool. There's swim lessons, lap swimming is still something of high value that you wouldn't necessarily see from the private sector, but something that we're trying to entertain all conversations at that level. So.
And not that we're at this point, or I'm not open up another development. My question is, if it does end up being a community neighborhood pool, then does that present possibility of having a second neighborhood pool at some point in the future? Not talking about now.
It potentially could.
That would
Yeah.
make sense if the city grows, there should be a second pool somewhere.
It potentially could. And we would look at also other facilities such as, the Y and some of the other pool facilities too as usable spaces. So
I appreciate all the work on this. We will get there. Thank you, Seth.
All right, item on the agenda.
Okay, so we're on to the to the agenda review, and we have 3 items. Mark, so we'll go through those and then we'll go back to any other questions on any other agenda items. So go ahead, Tim.
All right, so another thing is, we are setting a public hearing. We'll have a resolution for you on Thursday. to set a public hearing for March, for our first meeting in March. With that, this is the development agreement that we've been working very closely with, Cohorn. And,
Right.
thank you, yes, team. So, within that agreement, they're in review now. We will see construction completion by December of 2028. Land, that some of the incentives are the land, the grant up to 1 million. Please keep in mind that this is only if they were to not receive the workforce housing grant dollars and or potentially great deal. So depending, this is only if those are not awarded. In addition to that, we're such a 20-year, 100% rebate, but not to exceed the 6.64 million based on that 17.81 million. You see the front one rendering page here. This is a multi-use building, multi-family with commercial, about up to 12,000 feet with commercial and about 64 units. It also will have parking available within the premises of the lot. So a lot of details in this agreement has been established with those conversations. And again, we'll have that for Thursday just to set the public for our next meeting.
Okay, any questions for Ken? Okay, thanks, Jim. And the next item is submitted. Page 6, U2.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is for an applicant is proposing to do facade improvements to repair the existing weatherboard siding on a building located within the central corridor. And since this qualifies as a substantial improvement under the ordinance, it did require a central corridor review process. Here you see the building as is, and then the renderings proposed submitted by the applicant. The project does not alter the exterior architectural features. The work is limited to repairing and repainting the existing siding. The proposed colors shown here are complementary to the surrounding buildings and also remain consistent with the overall character of the central corridor. And also staff did meet with Uptown Design Committee and they concurred with staff's recommendation of approval based on the submission of the color and renderings. Any questions or comments?
I did tour this house and it's a big improvement from, there's a lot of disrepair, so.
I agree.
Good questions, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, so the applicant, the property owner here is requesting a sidewalk installation of the property that's highlighted on the screen located on 3rd Avenue between 31st Street and 35th Street. There is an existing house on this site with a detached, oversized shop. Property owner is looking at doing a 2-phase project. There was a site layout provided within your packet showing an additional 7 units for this property. One structure would be a 3-unit townhome and then 2 2-unit townhomes. The existing house would remain on the site. That detached shed would be removed and replaced with one of the townhomes in that second phase of the project. Due to the new construction of these small units, that would kick in the requirement for that sidewalk installation. The property owner is requesting that sidewalk installation be deferred just because of the nature of that section of 3rd Avenue. There being no sidewalks on that street, again, between 31st Street and 35th Street, nothing for that sidewalk to connect to. Staff is recommending approval of this request. This area is not within the sidewalk priority zone for schools. And then for our zoning and comprehensive plan, everything to the east of this property is kind of designated for industrial uses. In the future though, and in the applicant's letter, they did say if the council felt it necessary to have the sidewalk installed, that they would do that. And as that was an option, and that, well, that council can pass that resolution of necessity.
Okay. So. Just trying to visualize what this is, but I think yeah. Okay, questions?
All right, sidewalk person. So I know this is a ways down and I know it's not a perfect world. But there are really no sidewalks anywhere in that whole area, right? And it like that whole, all the way down to Third Avenue. We're one block up from Union, right? Union's on the south side of this picture.
So Union is just a little ways down.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then are there sidewalks on the west side of 31st? I can't really tell the picture.
Yes, there are sidewalks on the west side of 31st.
So if there were. Okay, it's not, this isn't, I'm not gonna make a huge deal of it, but I would hope that if we're putting housing and townhomes on this block, that we are putting a sidewalk in at least going west, because if they get to west, they can cross 31st and get to the sidewalk, which then takes you to the other areas. Because without that, they're gonna walk on the street, right, or the grass. Right. So we're putting housing there and then telling folks I get it going west. I'm sorry, thinking east. But I really. I don't know why we wouldn't have them put a sidewalk in, because then it just becomes like, well, there's no sidewalks anywhere else, why should we do that, and we put it in later. But if you're going to have people living there and they're going to be walking across the grass to get to the Star, to get to the school, to get anywhere going. So while we can defer it, I would say in my mind, I wouldn't be deferring it real. There's gonna be, the minute those things go up, I'm going to say, the minute there's people living there, I'm gonna say sidewalk facing. So I don't know how much of their budget matters if it happens before or after, but the minute there's people living there, I would hope that it requires.
What is the property on the corner?
So the corner of 31st Street and Third Avenue there, it is a single family residential home.
That has no sidewalk.
It has no sidewalks.
What does it take to? What's the process to have a sidewalk? Just for the sake of argument.
So it would take a city project, to do a sidewalk, to do a assessment project, reconstruction of a street, or if they were to dead on the existing house and rebuild.
Yeah, so I mean, because I can see Sarah's point, but for the fact that it doesn't really, I mean, if there was a sidewalk in the corner, then I would say, ask them to put in the sidewalk now, because it connects that property to the sidewalks on the west of 31st. So.
I agree, but I'm just like, what triggers? Now you have a gap. You put that in, now suddenly you'd be like, okay, now we have a gap. Like, so now we can just go a 3,000 gap on that wet house. It's not enough for me to vote against it, but I would say that I don't think I think we're letting them off, and then we kick the can down the road, and then suddenly it's like, why isn't there a sidewalk there? Well, there's no sidewalk here, well, we can't connect that, well, the people aren't really using it, well, who's gonna walk there? And we
I
don't
think
get it.
that's what it is when it's being developed. But we have been on this wouldn't be the first time. The senior facility on Albert Road, we did that, we asked them to put in a sidewalk, even though it doesn't connect to anywhere. Just in anticipation of, that's just the best time they had it put in, is now, because coming back later and saying, no, you don't put it in. It just, it just creates issues. Go ahead, well.
This kind of piggybacks off of that whole area and all the issues I've had with sidewalks in that neighborhood. And area, because there is nothing, you, like you said, they could cross the street to the east side of, the west side of 31st to get a quick start, but when they go up further, hit Fifth. There's a sidewalk, you can't get a quick start without walking through the grass. That, my recollection of that lot there, they're probably gonna have to do a retaining wall for a sidewalk in. So, because that's got quite a bit of slope there. But I would probably say, put it in sidewalk, we need a city plan to put a sidewalk to connect to 31st, have a crosswalk across 31st, because there is no crosswalk to cross 31st anywhere, which I've been bringing up for years now. There could be a crosswalk there. I said, there's an intersection, kind of an intersection that you can make, anyway. And there is no, the sidewalk ends on the east side of 31st, right before, or right in front of the senior facility, and then there's nothing. Which there should be. Because if you wanted to get to the trail, the only way to do that is to either walk through the grass along the east side of 31st, walk the sidewalk on the west side of 31st, but then you have to get grass to walk all the way to the trail. So it's just completely cut off from that. So I would be in favor of not giving the deferral right now, get it put in, and then the city doing a project to connect it, at least that for now, connect that. And then long term, get the rest of that area done, like I've been asking for years.
Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Will thank you just your teeing this up for me is really that second phase of our sidewalk plan. So last fall, we brought to you the plan with the routes to school, Marion Independent and Lindmar. We have a little bit of work yet to do on that to kind of finish that up, but you'll see that throughout the CIP, even in more depth than what we have. Just what we recently presented. Now we'll get ready, we'll work through the summer then to come to you this coming fall for that second phase of the sidewalk plan, so that we do have these conversations about what are the areas that we need to make walkable to get to those designated areas. Like, just even going across 31st Street and busy roadway, right? And then talking about where those crosswalks need to be. So very much so, that is that second phase that we need to put those details together, but it leads right into what you're talking about tonight.
This would just be one less gap. Okay, any other thoughts or questions? Go ahead.
No, my comment is I'll support the deferral. Again, I don't see, I agree with the recommendation to defer it. Again, at any time in the future, we can go to them and say, put in the sidewalk. But until we have a plan and there's priorities established for our sidewalk plan, I'm not going to be forcing anybody to do something when we really don't have a need for. I understand Sarah's comment, but in the wintertime, these people are going to be walking out of the street anyway if there's children there. So, because there's nothing on the corner. So until we have a more formalized sidewalk plan, I have no problem with a deferral on this, and knowing that in the future that we can, as part of our sidewalk assessment plan as well, is looking at all the deferrals, which ones we want to put sidewalks in that have been sitting out there, and this we can add to the list. So I will support it.
Are these going to be rentals or owner occupied?
I believe they are going to be rentals that the current property owner would retake the property.
Okay, I mean, that might make a difference too. I mean, might have a concern that it was deferred and then it was pushed off on the owners who would buy them, I mean, when the developer should have put in the sidewalk, but, okay. This is something to consider. Any other thoughts? Okay. That brings us to the rest of the agenda. If anyone has any questions on any other item that was not marked by staff, anything needs to be discussed or clarified? for Thursday? All right. Okay, that brings us to the end of the agenda. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you Thursday.